The disciples of Jesus Christ claim to have witnessed the biggest event in the history of mankind. They saw a risen Jesus, who 3 days earlier died by crucifixion and had been buried in a tomb. The disciples' testimony leads to the Disciples Trilemma. They were deceivers, they were mistaken, or they were truthful. Who were these disciples? What did they claim to have witnessed? What about the objections from the critics of Christianity? And what do all of these questions mean for you? How can you share this information in your personal evangelism? Wait a minute. You are personally telling people they need to be saved, right? These questions and more will be answered in this video series. The disciples were telling the truth, and this video series will be a defense of the truthfulness of their testimony. What's going on? I'm Brother Johnny Mac, and this is Impact Evangelism, the YouTube channel that's all about evangelism. So if you're into evangelism, this is the channel for you. And this is the Disciples Trilemma, Part 20. Thomas, the disbeliever to believer. Thomas was one of the 12 apostles, and he's presumed to be from the Galilee area, and his name means twin. Thomas means twin, and also his name in Greek, Didymus, also means twin. So Thomas was probably a twin. Of course, the Bible doesn't give us his name, his twin's name, but we can presume to know that Thomas was a twin. Thomas doesn't play a huge role in the Synoptic Gospels. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the Synoptic Gospels, he is just mentioned in the list when it lists the apostles. But when we go to the book of John, we see a lot of information about Thomas. So we can go to the Gospel of John and find out why Thomas's witnessing of the resurrection, his testimony, is so important to prove the truthfulness of the resurrection. In John chapter 11, Jesus and his disciples find out that their friend Lazarus is sick and dying. And he lived in the town of Bethany. And so Jesus and his disciples were going to go to Bethany and visit. And we know the story of Lazarus where he ended up raising him from the dead. But the point I want to make here is about Thomas. Because when Jesus wanted to go to Bethany, his disciples warned him not to go. Because there was death threats on Jesus' life. And they were pretty serious, obviously, because he ended up dying. Right? So these rumors are swirling around. These threats are swirling around Jerusalem, and Bethany is just outside of Jerusalem. And so the disciples were a little bit leery of going and visiting in Bethany. For good reason. They were scared to die, right? But Thomas said something interesting that gives us a glimpse into his character. So in John chapter 11, verse 16, let's read that verse. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, again that means twin, right? Thomas and Didymus means twin, unto his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. So we learn some things about Thomas and his character in this verse. Number one, he's pretty loyal. He's willing to go with his Savior to Jerusalem, or to Bethany near Jerusalem. And he's also pretty courageous. He says, I'm willing to die right there with you, Lord. Let's go. And we also see that he's kind of a glass half empty kind of a guy. He's kind of pessimistic. You know, he's thinking, well, if we go to Bethany, we're dead, right? That's what he's thinking. But this shows, gives us a glimpse of his character. He's loyal, he's courageous, and he's kind of a glass half empty kind of a guy. Now, we're going to take a look at what the verses where Thomas is most famous for, right? And the book of John, Gospel of John, and chapter 20, Jesus had just appeared to all the apostles except for Thomas. And of course, Judas. He's out of the picture by now, but All of them except for Thomas, Jesus appears to. And then they tell Thomas, they say, Thomas, man, we saw Jesus risen from the dead. And Thomas didn't believe them. So let's see what Thomas said in John chapter 20. In John chapter 20, verse 25, the Bible says this: The other disciples therefore said unto him, We have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. So we see that Thomas was not a doubter, he was a disbeliever. Right? That's kind of a misnomer. The doubting Thomas label on Thomas is a little bit off, in my opinion. There was, doubt. When you have doubts about something, there's an element of maybe belief mixed in. To actually doubt something, it's sort of like a neutral position, right? When you disbelieve something, that's totally negative, and when you believe something, that's totally in the positive direction. So the doubts are kind of in the middle, right? Sometimes you maybe believe a little bit, you doubt a little bit, you disbelieve a little bit, so you have some doubts. Thomas didn't have any doubts. He just did not flat out believe that Jesus had risen from the dead. And he's saying, I need some evidence. That's what Thomas is saying here. I need some evidence. And then, I need some evidence. Until then, I don't believe. It should be noted that the other apostles didn't believe either until Jesus had visited them and shown them to be resurrected from the dead. But none of them got it. Jesus said several times throughout his ministry, predicted his death, predicted his burial, predicted his resurrection, all those things. And still the apostles were slow on the draw. Right? They didn't really understand until Jesus appeared to all of them. So we can't really blame Thomas too much for his doubts or his disbelief, let's say. Not his doubts, but his disbelief. So let's not be too hard on Thomas. But a week later, something happens to Thomas. Before we get back into that narrative, I think let's note that a lot of people are like Thomas. A lot of people in this world want some evidence. They need some evidence, and they're actually sincerely looking for evidence. A lot of people say, they'll never believe no matter how much evidence. If Jesus, walked up to them today and showed himself to be, who he was, slapped him in the face, they still wouldn't believe, right? All kinds of evidences can come people's way, and they just do not want to believe the truth of who Jesus is, right? But some people are willing to believe with the evidence. I think Thomas represents a lot of people like that, and I think we shouldn't look down on people like that. That's what these Disciples Trilemma videos are for. Is to equip you to reach people that are like Thomas, who are looking for some evidence. They're open to believing in the gospel, but they've heard things about the Bible that's not true. They've heard things about Jesus and the resurrection being not true. All these things they're swirling in their minds, and but if they have a little evidence, they could believe. That's what these videos are for, to equip you with evidential apologetics concerning the resurrection, to show people that Jesus did rise from the dead. So let's take another little detour before we get back to the narrative, what happened to Thomas a week after he appeared to the other apostles. Let's look. It's another verse, another passage of Scripture that will open a window up to us to see what made Thomas tick. In John chapter 14, Jesus is telling his disciples that his ministry is about to come to a close, and he's heading to heaven. And he's going to send the Holy Spirit after he goes to heaven, when he's glorified in heaven and sits on the right hand of the Father. And so the disciples are a little bit confused. They're not sure. Jesus says, I'm going back to where I came from. And they're like, well, how can we know the way? Where are you going, Lord? And that's what Thomas says. he actually asked the question that all of the other apostles were probably thinking. So we see that Thomas, his nature is to ask questions. He wants to know answers to things, right? He's inquisitive. And so we see that he wants some evidence to believe. He's asking questions, and a lot of people are like that. They're asking questions. If you get into conversations with people about Jesus and the gospel, and you engage in dialogue with people, they'll ask you questions. Now, sometimes you don't know the answers to the question, and that's fine, but it behooves you to get as many answers as you can, right? You can say, somebody asks you a question that they don't know about the Bible or about Jesus, you can always say, I don't know, be honest, and say, I'll get back with you. I'll look that question up and I'll bring an answer back to you the best that I can. But I want you to equip yourself to be able to answer these questions, because there's a lot of people like Thomas out there who will believe, can be persuaded to believe the truth of the gospel. If we give them the right evidence and answer the questions that they're looking for, they're really, in their heart, they're searching for the truth, and they're willing to believe the truth. So that's where we come in as soul winners. And when we're sharing the gospel, that this apologetics can help supplement what's going to save them, and that's the gospel of Christ. It's the gospel of Christ that's going to save someone. And in fact, when Thomas asked this question to Jesus, he gives a response that's one of the most famous and most quoted passages of Scripture in the New Testament. Jesus tells Thomas, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. And so we see that one of the most famous verses of the Bible came about where Thomas was inquisitive, asking questions. And that's the gospel message, that Jesus is the only way to the Father. So, with that background in mind, knowing Thomas's character a little bit more, let's go back to the scene in John chapter 20. Now, in John chapter 20, like we said, Jesus had appeared to the disciples a week earlier, and they, of course, believed. They saw him, right? And they're telling Thomas, hey, we saw Jesus risen from the dead. And he said, I don't believe. I need some evidence. So Jesus shows up a week later and gives Thomas the evidence, right? And here's how that goes down. In John chapter 20, verses 27 through 29, the Bible says this. Then saith he to Thomas, reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands. And reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. And Thomas answered and said unto him, my Lord and my God. Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet have believed. So again, we see Thomas is kind of responsible again for one of the most famous quotes in Scripture. When Jesus proved to him that he had risen from the dead, Thomas in that very instant believed and realized that Jesus was God in the flesh. And that's part of the gospel, by the way. Jesus is the second person of the Trinity. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three persons in one being, sharing all the same attributes. Jesus is God. And Thomas recognized this and got down on his knees and made this confession that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, my Lord and my God, because the resurrection proves who Jesus is. The Son of God, God in the flesh, Yahweh from the Old Testament is Jesus, the Lord of all creation. And Thomas knew it at that very moment, and Thomas believed. And then in the next chapter, in John chapter 21, a group of disciples are there fishing in Galilee, and Jesus shows up to them, and Thomas is one of those disciples that meets Jesus there when they were fishing. Now let's take a look outside of the Bible for some strong evidence that Thomas actually went to India to spread the gospel and to plant churches, and he died as a martyr in the country of India around 72 AD. And in fact, Sean McDowell makes a great case that you can believe that this is true, that the story about Thomas dying for his faith as a martyr in India, that is probably true. The facts of history bear it out. So Sean McDowell makes this case in his book, The Fate of the Apostles, that Thomas died as a martyr. So we see Thomas, probably a fisherman from the town of Galilee, who has an inquisitive nature, asking a lot of questions, was pretty bold in asking questions. He just would not believe until he saw evidence that Jesus had risen from the dead. Now, Thomas again represents, I believe, a large portion of people out there today. All they need is a little bit of evidence and some questions answered, and their hearts can be opened up to believing the truth, that Jesus is the Son of God who came to earth to die for the sins of mankind, and he rose again the third day to give eternal life to everyone who puts their trust in him. And that's the message that we have. And Thomas delivered that message to the country of India and died as a martyr. He was willing to die and did die for the fact that he saw with his own eyes Jesus risen from the dead. So what's holding you back from sharing the gospel? We're not under the threat that a lot of people are in the world. We have no excuse. We see the boldness of Thomas. Let's have that boldness of Thomas to go off into the world and share the gospel. So if you want to make an impact on this world, what are you waiting for? Go out today and share the gospel. And I'll see you next time on the Disciples Trilemma.